Hi, I'm Whitney Espich, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's Career Lunch and Learn program, Cracking the Code of Inspiration, the Science Behind the Spark, being brought to you by the MIT Alumni Association and sponsored in part by the MIT Federal Credit Union, MIT Professional Education, and MIT Sloan Executive Education. My name is Heather Konar, and I am the Communications Officer for the Office of Graduate Education. I'll be serving as your moderator for today's program. Our office provides institute-wide support serving students, faculty, and staff in the areas of student personal support, grad diversity, grad policies and procedures, fellowships and financial literacy, and building community. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today from your various locations. We're very glad to have you here. I believe that it will provide at least a bit of a spark for you. As a reminder, our webinar is being broadcast live today. Throughout the program, you may submit your questions using the Q&A feature located in your Zoom toolbar towards the bottom of your screen. So please note that the Q&A feature is separate from the chat feature. Two different things. Put your questions in the Q&A, please, and you can also keep an eye on the chat as we go along. For listeners joining via YouTube, you can add your questions to the comments fields, please. So go ahead and submit your questions throughout the webinar, and we will collect them for the Q&A segment toward the end of the program. I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Allison Holzer and Sandra Spataro. Allison and Sandra are co-CEOs of InspireCore and co-authors of Dare to Inspire, Sustain the Fire of Inspiration in Work and Life, a book that redefines inspiration as a critical resource in modern work and organizational culture. Allison speaks and writes passionately on this topic, using content that's grounded in her experience and thought leadership in executive coaching, emotional intelligence, and applied positive psychology. Allison holds a BA in psychological brain sciences with an emphasis on learning and cognition from Dartmouth College, and a dual master's degrees in education and fine art from American University. Sandra is an associate professor of management at Northern Kentucky University. At InspireCore, Sandy blends her Silicon Valley experience with academic rigor to craft innovative, high-impact development plans for leaders, teams, and organizations. As a professor who publishes, Sandy translates her research expertise in social influence and culture into actionable, accessible frameworks and tools. Sandy holds a PhD in organizational behavior, industrial relations from the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley. Allison and Sandy, a warm welcome to you both, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today from wherever you are joining. We're so excited to be talking about the science behind the spark, inspiration, and ideas for how you can begin to crack your own inspiration code. I'll just share briefly that Sandy and I and our third co-author, Jen Grace Barron, we started on this journey, it was about 7 years ago. And I actually remember the day that we were having this conversation and we were on a virtual Zoom kind of meeting. And I remember where I was sitting at that time when we were having this conversation and we asked this question because we were starting this work and a business together. And we asked this question, what makes the difference between an average day and an extraordinary day in your work? Like what makes that difference? And this idea, this word inspiration kept coming up again and again, and we became very curious about it. You know, that these extraordinary moments in our lives and our careers are moments when we feel inspired. and inspired to take action in new ways. And today, when we're facing so much uncertainty, global tragedy, suffering, inspiration is a way that we can see a path forward through these difficult times. So we're really excited to be sharing this with you today. And before we dive in, I will share as well that we have a special offer for those of you who are here, which is a giveaway of our book. And so we'd like to get you warmed up right now using the chat function. If any of you are interested in being put into a raffle for a giveaway of our book, Dare to Inspire, type your name into the chat box now. And a member of our team will be collecting your names and drawing from the raffle and submitting. Some of you will get to take this away with you. And what I will share is that if you're interested in cracking the code on inspiration for yourself, the book will take you on a journey and a path to doing that. So we're excited to share it.
Names are pouring in. We're so excited for your interest. Thanks,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Wonderful. All right, so shall we dive in? We want to start by thinking about when you look at some of the most extraordinary achievements of all time, think about scientific discoveries, technology advancements, social movements. When you look at what's common amongst all of them, inspiration is at the source. And so we want to begin by really sharing with you as MIT alums a few notable MIT alumni who really showcase in their stories and in their careers how inspiration was pivotal. And not just pivotal in terms of sparking inspiration at the beginning of their careers, but also how they've been able to sustain it over time, leading to incredible impact. So the first example we want to share with you is Shirley Ann Jackson. And Shirley Ann Jackson was the first African-American woman to have received a doctorate from MIT, so clearly a pioneer in her own right. And she went on to have an amazing career in physics, and now continues to inspire young people through her work as president of RTI. And we love this quote that you see here: treasure your curiosity and nurture your imagination. Have confidence in yourself. Don't let others put limits on you. Dare to imagine the unimaginable. I just want you to hear in those words how expansive this is, how she sees big possibilities, right? Imagination. And it's a beautiful example of inspiration as we define it. And we'll come back to this later, how wonderful of an example this is. But you can see in her career how inspiration is clearly important. It's in how she talks about herself and others and her impact on others. Another example that we have for you is Buzz Aldrin, who is clearly a pioneer as the second man to walk on the moon. And clearly inspiration, you've got to be inspired to become an astronaut and to be going into space, charting uncharted waters. But what's interesting is that he's continued to keep his inspiration alive through his involvement to this day with Mars mission and other work with NASA. And then finally, we want to share with you Kofi Annan as another example of an inspiring leader who launched as Secretary General of the UN and went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001. He's obviously committed his whole life to achieving peace around the world, including now he has a foundation that works on international development. Really inspiring person and leader looking to have this big impact in the world throughout his career. And so what I hope you hear in these brief examples is both how inspiration has been a source for each of these leaders to have an incredible impact, right? Inspiration has sparked that impact. But at the same time, notice as you hear their stories, do you feel a bit inspired by them? Like, do they make you feel like you want to reach and extend beyond as well? And if you notice that in yourself, that's because inspiration is contagious, right? You feel it, and you feel it from others. And when others are inspiring, you pick up on that yourself. So it's a beautiful and powerful driver for passion, impact, and for greatness. So all of you here today, you are MIT alums. So we want to focus on how do you take this and apply it for you? How do you break inspiration down so that you can begin to crack your own code. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to have you know why inspiration is needed, why is it important, right? We're also going to talk about how it works, and we redefine really what it is and how it works. And then we're going to have you begin to crack your own code of inspiration, just to start the process today. And this process that we've designed, it's based on research that we've done over the years. We started off with a thorough lit review of a lot of different bodies of research that you see here. I'm not going to go into all of these. There has been some research done on inspiration, experimental research, but it's pretty limited. So we looked at a lot of other bodies of literature. But in addition to doing a literature review, we wanted to go out and discover for ourselves. This thing about inspiration, it sounds good, but why is it so important? Why is it so impactful? What is it about it that makes this difference for leaders? And so we went out and we interviewed leaders across all different industries and backgrounds. And we also have observed and learned from clients. And so the number on the right really represents those that we went out to understand and study to understand how this works, inspiration, so we can share it with you. And some of what we've learned, so there's some stats on inspiration and why it's important. So we know from others' research that 60% of CEOs rate inspirational leadership as critical in organizations. So those of you who are working within organizations, those of you who are leading or looking to grow in your leadership, inspiration is really incredibly important for you in your career. And we know that inspiration from others' research that we've studied, that inspired employees are 3 times more productive as those that are dissatisfied. But yet only 1 in 8 people report being inspired at work, right? So there's a tremendous opportunity for more people to report being inspired so that they can have certainly more productivity and inspirational leadership. But in addition, we found from our own research what's even more important, even more than just productivity that inspiration impacts. We found in our research that when people are inspired, they are more visionary and strategic in their thinking. They're more purpose-driven. They're more productive, but they're also more engaged and they drive better results. And it actually cultivates stronger relationships with one another. And so you can see how, these qualities, the ability to be visionary in your thinking, to think big, the ability to really be engaged, productive, and drive forward, this is now more than ever critically important for us during these challenging times. So these are some powerful results, right? So this is, why inspiration is important. It's why we think about it as having a powerful ROI, but rather than return on inspiration, we think about it as return on investment. We think about it as return on inspiration, right? So why is it that it has such a powerful result? Why is it that all these incredible things happen when you are inspired? And it has to do with how we define inspiration, and actually how we redefine inspiration. So we have redefined inspiration as different than creativity. It's different than flow. It's different than engagement or motivation, although inspiration can happen alongside those other things. We define inspiration very specifically as these 2 things happening at one time. And you see them here. When you're inspired, you have a greater sense of possibility. In other words, you think bigger. You might be looking at a problem that you're trying to solve, and instead of looking at it here, all of a sudden you look at it and you see this. You see more possible solutions. At the same time as having greater possibilities, you also feel this heightened confidence and courage to take action, which we call invincibility. So imagine that energy when you're trying to solve a problem, when you're trying to achieve a goal that's important to you, that you have this greater sense of possibility and this invincibility and confidence to take action. Wow, that's a powerful combination, right? That energy you drive towards your goals and towards the results that you're trying to impact. But here's the thing, a lot of people think of inspiration as, yes, that's exciting, that feels good. that's a nice energy to have, but then, I feel that way for a little bit and then it goes away. Like it doesn't last. And what we found in the inspiring leaders that we interviewed, and you heard them in the examples of the alumni that we shared, was that not only are they able to tap into that possibility and invincibility for themselves, but they're able to make it last. They're able to take inspiration and turn it into sustainable inspiration throughout their careers. And they do that through what we call intentional practice. So actually noticing what it is that inspires you and starting to build it into your day-to-day so that when you need it, you can tap into it, you can activate it, and you can drive it towards your goals and your results. And so I want to go back to that quote by Shirley Ann Jackson that I found really inspiring. You hear this definition in her quote. She says, treasure your curiosity and nurture your imagination. A lot of possibility, right? You can hear it in what she says. She also says, have confidence in yourself. Don't let others put limits on you. Dare to imagine the unimaginable. You hear that confidence, you hear that invincibility in what she's saying, that you can do it no matter what. It's in her quote, this definition of inspiration. It's how she inspires. And then what you see in her story, her lifelong practice of inspiration, is how she's clearly intentionally practiced it. She's brought it into her career throughout her lifetime. All right, so are you ready? Hopefully we've convinced you at this point that inspiration is important. It's something that you want. So let's get into how to really experience it and create it for yourself. So we want to ask you to think about right now for yourself a time when you were inspired. And it says here in your work, but if you want to think personal life, that's fine too. And I want to invite all of you who are here today to either sit up taller in your chair, or if you'd like, you could even stand up. And as you do this, the word inspiration comes from the Latin word inspirare, which literally means to breathe in air. It literally means, that's what inspiration means at the root of it. So I'd like you now to just close your eyes, think about that time recently that you felt inspired, and take a nice deep breath in. And just feel the air coming into your lungs. Notice how it shifts your posture. Notice how your posture comes up. You're more open. You're thinking about, new ideas in this moment when you felt inspired. You likely had new possibilities in front of you. You felt more confidence. And just notice what that feels like as you're experiencing it now, as you're re-experiencing it and living it. And as you think about that time that you were inspired in your work, imagine, just take yourself back there, and we'd like you to pop into the chat box, if you can. What was the positive result? So you were inspired at this time. Like what was the positive result for you? What was the positive result in your work? Perhaps the positive result on those around you. So pop into the chat now, just one or two examples of things that were different, better for you as a result of this inspirational time and moment. And I'm seeing a lot of these coming in. There's a lot around energy, purpose, engagement. Wow, I saw something about gold medal flying by. Boost in energy, more productivity, infinite energy. Wow, amazing. Stopped asking for permission. Wow, yeah, I can hear that boldness. Motivation, centered, clarity and focus. Wow. I don't know about you, but just seeing these coming into the chat box, I'm feeling a greater sense of invincibility and possibility, just seeing everything coming in, right? So notice that positive impact that you see both in yourself and in all the people around you who are sharing their experiences right now. Yes, this is why inspiration is important. You want this, you need this, and a lot of us think about inspiration as something you have to wait to happen to you, but you don't. You don't. You can make it happen for yourself. Okay, so if you want inspiration to happen, what do you do? How do you start? So the first part of cracking the code on your own inspiration is to simply choose it. Now that sounds really simple, but sometimes it can be harder than you think. But the first step is to choose inspiration, because we believe that it's a leader's first job to inspire yourself. And by the way, when we talk leadership, we're not talking about a formal leadership title or role. We think everyone on the call today, you are all leaders from wherever you stand, because we view leadership as ownership of your impact on others around you, right? So when you're in a leadership role, you are owning how you're impacting those around you. And you have an opportunity to choose inspiration as part of your leadership. Just like we saw Shirley Ann Jackson clearly chooses inspiration, right? And you could hear that in her quote. So this is the first step in cracking the code. You get to choose it. So I'd like you to just think for a minute now, where could you use more inspiration? So if you could choose to have more inspiration in a particular area right now in your life, in your work, it can be a smaller area, it can be a huge area, pop into the chat box. Where is it that you could use more inspiration right now in this moment? I'm going to invite you to just be open and sharing this. Yep, so we've got work, job searching, managing people remotely. That is really hard. We've got folks working on thesis, parenting. Yes, I can hear you there. I'm struggling with that myself. Thinking about next steps, change management. Yes. Raising a child, global issues. Yes. Just see in these examples where people are needing, and this is for you personally, where you need more possibility and invincibility, that confidence. Yes. So I want you to remember this area where you want more inspiration, because we're going to come back to that, but just jot it down or have it in front of you. And by the way, we do have handouts. I believe they popped the link into the chat box, but we have some takeaway handouts for you, which, if you have your computer up and you want to download, you can. These questions will be on the handouts as well, but just jot it down for you, that area where you want more inspiration. So you've identified where you want more inspiration, you want to choose it. So where do you find it? Like, what do you begin to do? And what we know is that the second step after you choose inspiration is to begin to learn your inspiration fingerprint. Now, this is something that we discovered in our research that is part of cracking your code, because inspiration is highly personal. In fact, Sandy, I don't know if you remember, I think we were like 10 interviews in when we were talking to folks about what inspired them, asking these questions. And we had, one leader who said, it's walks in nature. We had another one who said, it's when I see vital signs dropping in the emergency room. That's inspiring to me. And we thought, wow, that's really different. And someone else said, I get really inspired when someone says, no, you can't do that. And I thought, wow, that's really different. The answers were so diverse, right? Do you remember that? And, I remember at the time we said, how are we going to make sense of all this? Like, it's not clear. Like, so many different things inspire people in different ways. But that in itself was an important insight for us, that inspiration, it's like a fingerprint that's unique to you, what inspires you. And so part of cracking your code is really understanding and getting to know what that fingerprint is. So if you want to begin to explore and understand what your fingerprint is, where do you start? Well, we did find some patterns in our research. And one of the patterns that we found is that there are 3 different sources of inspiration for people. So there are 3 different places you can go for inspiration. I'm going to walk through these quickly now. So the first place, some people, when they want to get more inspiration, they go inside of themselves. We call this personal inspiration. So you might, decide that you want to go dig into some really interesting research that fires you up. You might want to carve out some open time to brainstorm and think creatively. Or maybe you want to dig in deep and think about your strengths and your values and how you want to bring those out more. Personal inspiration is about finding the spark inside of you. The second pathway to inspiration you see on the bottom right is when you source inspiration. Rather than going inside of yourself, you go to the people around you. You look to your colleagues, to your friends. Maybe you want to understand in your work a shared mission that brings you together with the people around you, or you give someone a phone call who you know will lift you up and inspire you. You reach out to mentors, to heroes who move you. So this is sourcing inspiration from people around you. And then the third place that people can go is to look to their environment, look to situations around them. Sometimes I think about, artists and creative people who say, okay, I want to go to a museum, or I want to go into nature because that's going to lift me up and I'm going to feel that sense of possibility and invincibility from these beautiful environments. But it can also be looking at situations that you're in and, really flipping how you think about them so that you feel more inspired in those situations. So we'd like to ask you now, as you are uncovering your own inspiration fingerprint, you're cracking your own code, and we're going to ask you in a poll to answer the question, in that area where you identified earlier where you want more inspiration, if you had to go to one of these three pathways first, where would you go first? So the poll should be coming up for you in just a minute, and you can click your answer. Would you go to find inspiration inside of yourself? Would you go to the people around you? Or would you go to situations, nature, environments, concerts, large group experiences? And as those are coming in, Sandy, maybe I'll ask you, where do you tend to go first?
It's so interesting. Since we've been working remotely and I live by myself, so I'm in my house, I've been turning much more to the relationship-based inspiration from others engines. I've noticed it. Usually I'm a situations person, and specifically environments really inspire me, but I see in myself that I've shifted to inspiration from others a lot more since we've been working this way.
Ah, nice. Interesting. Yeah. So brings up a good point that where we can go for inspiration can shift over time for sure. I would say for me personally, I definitely, I often will go inside myself first. I like to, we'll talk more about this later, but I really like to carve out open, unstructured time for really thinking and simmering in new ideas, and that tends to be a source of inspiration for me. So how are we doing on the poll? Is it closing out? Let's see what the results are. All right, so when you want inspiration, where do you go first? Looks like inside of myself, 43% of people voted that they go inside of themselves. Oops, it popped back down. Thank you. Situations around me, about a third, and other people, about a third. So this is really helpful, I think, for everyone here to see the diversity of the responses in terms of what can inspire you. This is important for you as a leader, because if you're leading a team, or if you're teaching and you have students, knowing that there's great diversity in how people get inspired, and that you may be trying to inspire someone in a way that maybe doesn't resonate with them. So it's a discovery process both for you to know where you want to go for inspiration. It can also be a discovery process for those that you lead to really understand them better. Great. So you have identified a place where you want more inspiration. You've got a pathway, whether it's a third of you are looking inside of yourself, some of you are looking to others, some of you are looking to situations. Then here's where the rubber hits the road, because the question is, now what? Now what do I do? And I wish the answer was super simple. I wish I could just say, here's what you do, right? But it's not that simple, because again, remember that inspiration is like a fingerprint. It's really unique. So it's here for you to discover about yourself. But what I will share for you is some specific pathways. Within each of the pathways, we found specific, what we call engines of inspiration. And engines of inspiration are things that you can intentionally do or think about that will reliably spark inspiration. So I'm going to quickly go through these in each of these three columns. When we get to the pathway that you selected for yourself, I want you to just think and notice if there's a particular engine within this column that stands out to you as interesting, exciting, or something that you'd want to experiment with. Okay? So under personal inspiration, in our research, we found these specific engines of inspiration: values and purpose, progress and achievements, and that's both accomplishing things, but also making progress towards meaningful goals. New perspectives, so learning new things, simmering yourself in these new ideas, activating your strengths, particularly in new and different ways. Unstructured times, that's time for your brain to sort of be open and have a little sabbatical. And then movement and presence, so actually how you move your body, getting up, walking around, that kind of thing. So that's under personal inspiration. So for those of you who selected that pathway, pick one or two that you think might be interesting for you to try to play with, okay? Inspiration from others. We've got mentors and heroes we've talked about. We've got serving others. So this is really helping, being of service. Vulnerability. So believe it or not, sharing your own vulnerability with others can be a source of inspiration. Belonging. So reaching out to your communities and feeling that sense of belonging within a community. Getting a lift. This is calling someone who you know will boost you up and give you that lift that you need. And then finally, having a shared mission with your team or with a community that you're involved in. So again, those of you who picked this pathway, snag one of these that you think is intriguing or interesting. And last, we have inspiration from situations, environments around you. So the first one is moving environments. This is like nature, going to art museums. The second is witnessing excellence. This is why people love to go to watch the Olympics, right? We're inspired when we see people who are rising to excellence in their work. Shared group experiences. This is like large group, concerts, situations where you have that collective conscience, where you're feeling what everyone else is feeling and it's lifting you up. Movements. Overcoming constraints. So this is when you're in a situation where you've got major obstacles in front of you, and rather than feeling intimidated by those obstacles, they actually inspire you to go forward. Making a difference. This is when a specific situation in front of you calls for your unique strengths and expertise. So you see it in front of you and you say, I know I can make a difference there. It's really inspiring. And then finally, grief, loss, and failure, which, to be honest, was surprising, when we found this in our research, that so many leaders that we talked to actually mentioned either personal loss or failures that they've experienced, and even grief of loved ones, leaders who lost children, and talked about that grief that they held close to their heart as actually being a source of inspiration for them. So although we think of inspiration as this sort of positive, upbeat emotion, and it can be sourced from sometimes difficult situations. All right, so whichever one jumped out to you, just jot it down for yourself. You might even pick one or two, and we're going to come back to that in just a minute. What we're going to do now is Sandy and I are going to talk through just a couple examples of what these engines of inspiration look like in real life, like how they unfold. And so we're going to start with one of the personal engines of inspiration, which is values and purpose. And this gentleman you see in the picture here, we interviewed for our book. His name's Wes Avila. And he's a really inspiring leader. And you see the quote here, that inspiration for him is a drive to create, reinterpret, reinvent, and to put forward something that is meaningful in my industry. So you can hear in his quote how having that sense of purpose within his industry is a major driver for him in his work. So Sandy, we have an opportunity for you to share with us an example of someone who really was able to tap into this engine of inspiration.
Yeah, my niece Michelle is a postdoc at University of Wisconsin. She does lab research. Michelle and her mice. She does research on specific proteins within the pancreas. And I was talking to her the other day, and we were talking about all that's going on in the world around us, right? Which is everything not the pancreas. And Michelle was saying, you know, I love my work and it's important to me, but I wish I was feeling more connected to what's happening in the world. I want to be making a contribution. I don't feel, she was feeling less inspired about her work because of that disconnection to the broader society, which I hear, right? I mean, I think a number of us, I certainly have felt the same at times myself.
Yeah. So what was it? How did she reconcile that or tap into that engine to be more inspired in her work?
Yeah, so we kind of just talked it through, and we were sort of digging into how it was that she wanted to have impact in the world. Why? Like, how could you? And certainly she can, you know, participate in demonstrations, or she can reach out to specific people in certain ways. But we realized that her overarching value around it had to do with helping people, making things better for people. And when we put that umbrella on it and tied it to her purpose in her research for making people healthier and understanding the pathways of how their digestive system works, she found a connection. And she was able to say, okay, you know, I'm not, I may or may not be on the street demonstrating on a specific topic of social injustice right now, but I can see how my work in making people's lives better has a similarity to that work right now. You know, I get that you got to make a little bit of a leap there, and it's not the same because there's not the societal urgency around proteins in the pancreas right now. But she talked about how it made her feel, again, that connection to her own work, that yes, I am actually able to make the world a better place. I am actually helping to make people's lives better the way I'm doing it. And each of us is making a contribution in that way. And I thought that was a great insight she had, to be able to make that connection for herself from her own work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. It's like she was able to elevate around what her work means to her in a new way by really seeing those values and that purpose that she has. Yeah. So in hearing that example, those of you listening, maybe this story has resonated with some of you. You know, if you're feeling that way in your work, if you're feeling perhaps less purposeful right now, or like you need more inspiration, think about, you know, that example Sandy shared, and what is it that how could you elevate your thinking or tap into your values and purpose in a way that reactivates that spark for you, where you feel inspired again. Yeah. Nice. Okay. So that's an example of values and purpose in action. Let's share one more that we've got here. So this is in the pathway of inspiration that you get from situations and circumstances. And this is the engine of overcoming constraints and obstacles. And you'll see, this is a quote from our book, leader that we interviewed, original founder of Alexion Pharmaceuticals. And he said that the most inspiring thing to him in his career, and that motivated him throughout his career, was the 2-letter word NO. When people say to him, you can't do this, he would just feel inspired to then say, I can rise above it, I'm gonna do it. And we wanted to bring this one up today because, you know, many of us are faced with many different obstacles and constraints right now of different kinds. You know, we have the uncertainty, we have the economy, we have, you know, civil unrest, we have, you know, for some people, their work is halted, they don't know what's going to happen. Others are in, you know, obstacles. I heard from the chat box with, you know, homeschooling or with children, childcare situations. There are many constraints and obstacles that we have in front of us. And so, you know, how is it that these constraints could actually be a source of inspiration for us? And what's interesting about this particular engine of inspiration is it's less about what you do and more about how you think about the constraints, right? It's the story that you're telling about the constraints and your mindset about the constraints. So we've heard some examples of this recently from healthcare providers who are, on the front lines. And I was having a conversation with one of them just, the other day, and she was saying how, it's so hard, and yet they are seeing this as an opportunity to really rise up, make a difference, have an impact. And so even though they're so exhausted in a way, it's the constraint that's in front of them is something that they want to overcome, to have that meaningful difference. And so when you think about this engine of inspiration, it's about the story that you tell yourself. The technical term is cognitive reframing, but the simple term is it's the story that you tell yourself. So questions that you might want to ask, if you're feeling frustrated by obstacles and constraints in front of you now, is what's the opportunity that this constraint or challenge offers? What's the opportunity? Where could this open something up for me or stretch me in a new way, to grow in a new way, or to try something different? How can this experience make me stronger, right? So when you ask yourself these kinds of questions, it's a way to shift your mindset where you can take this constraint and obstacle that's perhaps been deflating for you, and it can actually become a source of thinking of new possibilities and heightened confidence, that inspiration to take action in a new way. So I'm going to just ask yourself to now apply this to you, that if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling, frustrated by obstacles, what would you ask yourself? How might you flip this for yourself into an opportunity to think differently about inspiration? Yeah, and I see sometimes the comment about, sometimes it's hard to do in the moment, that it's easier in retrospect, like looking back and saying, oh yeah, that situation that was difficult helped me in these ways. So we're challenging you to flex that muscle in the moment, in the difficult situation, to say, what could be possible from here? Where might I go from here? Right? Nice. Okay, so the last example we want to give, going deep into another engine of inspiration, is in the category of inspiration from others. This is about getting a lift. And boy, do some of us need to get a lift right now, right? So Sandy, you had an example you wanted to share about this.
Yeah, this is also pertaining to my sort of living at home, working at home, being by myself quite a lot of the time. And I've realized that my sense of belonging is really kind of missing. And so I've learned, and I've started a practice now of reaching out to people. In those 15 minutes in between meetings that I have, I could burrow into my inbox and try to clear some stuff out. But instead, I'm really trying to make an intentional effort toward reaching out to people. I just connected to one of our extended team members yesterday. We hadn't talked one-on-one. We've been on group Zoom meetings a million times, but we hadn't talked one-on-one in such a long time. And I got a real lift from her, just connecting in that way. What I'm missing by not having people in the same rooms as I'm in, I was able to get that lift from her virtually because we were connected one-on-one. So for me, feeling this kind of isolation, one of the things that's really helping is marking in my calendar, I'm going to call this person on this day and that person on that day, and really trying to make a habit of it so that I'm not feeling so disconnected.
Nice. That's a beautiful example, Sandy, of the intentional practice that we talked about in sustainable inspiration. Now, you've identified that this is an engine that gives you lift right now, right? That it's a source of inspiration for you. And rather than waiting for it to happen, or maybe someone will call me and I'll get that boost, instead you're saying, nope, I know I need it. I'm going to build it into my calendar. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to make this happen for myself. It's a leadership move. It's
so great when you feel that spark happen once, you want to, or I want to have it more often.
Yes.
So the next step of putting it into a regular practice is really easy, right? And you say, when can I find those 15-minute slots to just call somebody and say, hi, I'm thinking of you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And hopefully for everyone listening today, you're going to begin to notice too for yourself, when did you get a boost? When did you get that inspiration lift? What was it that contributed, and how can you begin to seek that out or build it into your day more intentionally. So inspired by Sandy's example, we wanted to give you a little challenge today, which is, we want to ask you to think about who's someone in your world that you think could use an inspiration lift right now. And we want to challenge everyone who's here today to intentionally go out and give someone else a lift. Give them a call, give them a boost, ask how they're doing, connect with them. And we're asking you to do this really, of course, just to be of service, but also because inspiration is contagious. And as we talked about, it's a leadership opportunity. It's a chance to share your inspiration with others. And we can lift each other up. And boy, we need this right now in our communities. We need to be thinking about ways that we can lift each other up. So challenge for all of you today to do this.
I'm going to jump in. It's also an opportunity to combine engines, which is nice, right? A cocktail mix of engines. When you call someone, you can be giving them a lift, but you can be pulling on another engine at the same time. One of the calls I made recently was to a person I worked with at Oracle 100 years ago when Oracle was small. And we were reflecting on this great boss we had who was really good at inspiring us when we worked in different parts of the building. We didn't work from home, but it had that same sort of separate feeling and remote feeling. And there was a little bit of kind of WWJD, what would Julie do? That we reflected on in that moment. So we gave each other a lift, and we were looking at mentors and heroes, which is another engine.
Wow.
So you can combine them that way to make it even more potent.
That's great. I love that example. And it's a really important point that part of cracking the code is knowing which engines you can draw from and combine to activate. And I'll share with you all, because I mentioned it earlier about unstructured time, that is something I've discovered in myself as a leader. That's an important inspiration practice for me. And I do often combine unstructured time with some of the other engines. So for example, I will take a long walk. And if I'm taking a long walk in nature, it's the physical activity, it's changing, I'm going into a moving environment that's inspiring, and I'm getting the unstructured think time that I need. And boy, when I come out of these situations, I'm often fired up with new ideas, new possibilities, ways to take action. It's a really important source of inspiration for me. And because of that, this idea of intentional practice, right? As leaders, when we know what those things are that bring us to life, that bring in that breathing in air, that inspiration into us, right? That we can then build that into our lives. So at least once a week, I have an unstructured time where I commit to it, that I'm going to spend some time just getting away and taking that time for myself. So we shared a lot of examples. We shared personal examples. We alluded to some of the stories in our book. We went deep in a few of the engines. We'd like to now go back to that list of those 18 engines of inspiration that you saw before. I want you to go back to this list, look again, and think about that situation where you want to spark more inspiration for yourself. And we'd love to hear in the chat box, what is the engine or combination of engines of inspiration that now, having heard these examples, you want to begin to practice and try out on your own? And it may be something new or different to you. It may be something that, maybe you've known about yourself, but you just haven't thought about intentionally building it into your week. So pop into the chat box the name of the engine or engines of inspiration that you are planning to commit to the week ahead, to bringing out more inspiration in that area where you need more of it. All right, we see some rolling in. All right, we've got some unstructured time, serving others, overcoming constraints. Yep. Purpose and values, good. Unstructured time.
There was some great comments earlier about spirituality and religion.
Ooh,
coming in
yeah.
under values and purpose, and really digging into that source of strength and belief.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's an important area for many, myself included.
Great is achievements, including small ones. I love that. So much momentum in celebrating small wins, small progress. It's great.
Yes. Yes, I see a lot on people mentioning movement and getting outside. I know I've been trying to take at least one meeting a day walking. You know, these small things, these small little movements, they may seem small in the moment, but again, this is important. This is about you bringing forward your best in your work on a day-to-day, and having that intentional practice of bringing forward your best. Beautiful. I love the diversity in all the engines that we see coming forward. Nice. Okay, so with that, we are, where we want to come back to is this idea of cracking your inspiration code, right? So that was our goal for today, is to have you toe dip in this. Now, our book takes you on a whole journey where you get to go in really deep. You can imagine how deep this can go, right? And it's really meaningful when you go deep on this. Today, we gave you a little toe dip into the water to experience a little bit of it. And we focused mostly on step one, the spark it, choose inspiration. What's an engine that you want to try, and how are you going to try it? But as you can imagine, it's equally important to begin thinking about, how do you sustain it? Once you spark inspiration, how do you sustain it on tough days? Keep it going. You know, as our MIT alum examples, how do you sustain it over the course of a career? And then finally, the step three of cracking your inspiration code is, how do you then share it, giving it to others, inspiring others, because inspiration is contagious. So with that, maybe if you could pop to the next slide. Okay, 90,000. Anyone want to take a guess what this number is? Anybody? Anybody? If you read the book, then you know. But feel free to pop in the chat box if you want to take a guess. Nicely done, Tom. Nicely done, Tom. Yes. Sales of our book. We hope so. Oh my gosh, Bruce. Oh yeah, number of COVID cases. Indeed, I know it's tough. Number of seconds to get inspired. So the answer here, 90,000, this is the average number of hours that we spend at work in a lifetime. On average, hours you spend at work in a lifetime. So just want you to think about that. It's a large number, right? Large number. And when you think about that, that's 90,000 opportunities. It's 90,000 opportunities to, as we talked about, bring forward some of those great results that happen when you're inspired, right? More strategic thinking, agility, innovation, better results. Even if, you know, we're not saying be inspired every moment of every day, wish that was possible, but even if 5% more or 10% more of these 90,000 hours for you were ones where you felt more inspired and you were sharing that with others, imagine the impact. Imagine the impact on you, on your day. Imagine the impact on, you know, in your work, your ability to give back positive impact in the world, and your ability to have that positive impact on others, because inspiration is contagious. So we want to invite you today to think about that, and, you know, how you might want to take on and practice inspiration so that you can be inspired and inspiring as a leader for more of these hours. So we leave you with the question, first of all, the world needs your inspiration. There's so much talent and so much brilliance, so many brilliant minds and big hearts who are here today with us. And the world needs your inspiration, because we need the ability to solve great challenges in front of us with new possibilities, and with that invincibility to take action. We need that. So the question that we want to leave you with is, as you lead today going forward, as you practice inspiration, and one of the ways that we talked about, what's going to be a positive outcome? Positive outcome either for you in that area where you need more inspiration, or positive outcome on others. And please pop that into the chat box so we can see what the positive outcome will be as a result of you leading forward with inspiration. Let's see what you got. Yes, serving the world better. Yes, clearer thinking, absolutely. Connecting others, wow, yes, we need more connection. Having an impact in local organization, taking action, improving my community, empowering others to achieve their full potential, yes. Increasing joy, beautiful. Love these examples. this is, you can see in the examples the impact that can have on you, on individually, and then cascading impact on our communities, on our work, and on each other. Solving big challenges. Yes, we need that. We need that today, don't we? Beautiful. All right, so we'll keep looking at these as they're rolling in, and what we'd like to invite now are questions that we'd be happy to answer.
All right, Allison and Sandy, thanks so much. Some of the questions that have come in already, how can you use inspiration to take more risks and achieve your goals?
You got it, Sandy.
How can you use inspiration to take more risks? Sorry, I got distracted on my computer. You know, inherent in inspiration is that invincibility component, which is about courage and confidence. When you're inspired, you're willing to take on more risk, more to enact the possibility that you envision. So reasonable risk taking, right? We don't want to take it to recklessness, but rational risk taking is inherent within inspiration. It's part of what you're going to feel, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So one of the things as I was reading the book that really stood out to me was going through the exercise of looking at what you're proud of in your achievements in the area in which you want to get inspired. And as you were talking, it really struck me that can apply to any area of your life in which you are seeking more inspiration, in your interpersonal relationships, at work, in your volunteer commitments, like wherever it is. And it was so simple, but I was like, wow, just, you know, because in this work environment of a pandemic, personally, I have been worried about this huge drop in my productivity. And it's actually time right now at MIT for annual performance reviews. And as part of that process, you go through, well, what did you accomplish this year? So for any of the listeners who either are going through that process in their work or just on their own, I might encourage you to kind of go through not just what did you accomplish so you can say I did something this year and I'm a worthwhile employee, but what are you really proud of? Because you can kind of bring that back to what inspires you. I'm sorry, that's not really a question.
But it's
I love it. I love it.
The great insight, and it speaks to the achievements and progress engine, right? About just noticing your own accomplishments, big or small.
So one of the questions that came in was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to add that often when we think about what we're most proud of, it also illustrates for us what we value most. And so at the same time, by asking yourself that question, you can tap into some of those values or strengths that are important to you, that then you can think about, okay, if that's what's important to me, how do I do more of that? How do I bring more of that forward and out in my work so that I can give more of that to the world and to others?
Awesome. So in light of, you know, trying to give someone else that lift, one of the questions that came in was, how can you help a teenager to get inspired, especially in this, you know, COVID-19 situation?
So it's a great question. I don't, my boys are not there yet. They're a bit younger. But I just spent some time with my sister who has some teenage boys. And actually I was just on a session a couple weeks ago with a guest who came on and talked about her inspiration practice that she's been creating and working on with her son, who's 15. And what stood out to me was this idea of engaging them in the conversation, right? Engaging them in the conversation. So she and her son, you know, had a talk and about, you know, what he needed in order to feel comfortable and okay, and, you know, even beyond that, inspired during this challenging time. What was going to help him? And together they designed this I'm not sure what to call it, but they had these different activities that he was doing. He's really into sports. They had, physical activity was part of it. He was helping out with chores, and they came up with this list of different things that were going to be mutually meaningful to both of them. So I think this idea of engaging them in the conversation, having them, express, what is it? Is it physical activity? Is it, using your strengths? What is it that will bring that forward more in you? It can become a discovery conversation for the teenager, to learn about themselves and their own engines of inspiration.
Great. And maybe just one more question, because we're already a bit over time. How would you prioritize inspiration and passion in choosing your next career or your next goals?
I'll
Go,
start.
Sandy.
I mean, inspiration should drive your goals. Your goals should inspire you, and what inspires you should inform your goals, right? They're informing each other in that way. And so when you're talking about what direction you want your career to take or what goals you want to set for yourself, looking at what does inspire you, going back to your inspiration fingerprint is a great way to then project forward to what you want to shoot for, what's going to be most meaningful to you. So, I find in my day job as a professor that being in my classroom with my students and them having an aha moment is like, religion to me. That's the most exciting thing that happens to me. That's my passion. And so that drives me to set goals around making that happen more often, engineering new ways and designing new processes for that, bringing that stuff into our work at InspireCore, how we can do that. And it was actually one of the reasons I chose to become involved in InspireCore when Allison and Jen and I were first talking about, are we going to form a company around this? What are we going to do? It was around my own knowledge of what inspires me, and it is about working with people and helping them become their best. Talking a little bit in a circle, but these are so closely interrelated, they should inform each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll add to that too, that there's this whole body of literature on something called job crafting, which is essentially, yes, you want to use inspiration and passion to drive your decisions about where to go in your career, and you want to follow those things that move you in that way. Sometimes you might be in a job or career where you think, okay, I'm not currently inspired, but I also can't change or shift right now. So I'm sort of in this situation. So how do I then shift the current situation that I'm in to be more inspiring? So this idea of job crafting, and if you Google it or research it, you can see more about it. There's resources online, but essentially it's this way of, shifting, even if it's slight ways that you shift either your tasks or your mindset or the ways that kind of the people that you interact with in your day-to-day, so that it aligns more with what inspires you. And the whole process of job crafting, it's around, kind of values and your strengths and your passions. And so I just encourage people to both think about, yes, keep following. It's like a compass. Inspiration should be like a compass for you and your career trajectory. And even if you're not in that, perfect job yet, let's say, you can take action from where you are, crafting your current work around, what inspires you.
Great. Sorry, there were a lot of great questions that came in like right at the end. So I'm going to slip one more in there.
Okay.
Did you spend any time looking at what saps your inspiration, and whether the reason that it's being sapped impacts how you reclaim and sustain it?
Yes, we did. We have a section that we write about in the book on, we call them enemies of inspiration, but it's this, and there are different kinds. So there are more physical kind of things that can get in the way. So your actual physical energy level. You noticed many people talked about energy, when they were talking about what inspires them. So if you're physically exhausted, or if you've got too many things going on in your schedule, multitasking too much, these are physical kind of barriers to inspiration. We also talked about emotional kind of enemies of inspiration. Now, I happen to believe that all emotions are valid and important, and I don't, judge, emotions and say it's bad to feel this way. But sometimes you can get stuck in a particular emotion for a long time and you have trouble getting out of it. Maybe you get stuck in kind of ruminating about something, and that can get in the way and be an enemy of inspiration. And we also talk about mindset, so kind of cognitive things that you might think about that get in the way of inspiration. So we definitely did look at that. And it's important to note because, sometimes inspiration is about, identifying the engines and activating them. Sometimes it's about clearing some of the noise that's getting in the way, right? Kind of opening up more space for you to be inspired. Anything you'd add to that, Sandy?
No, great.
Okay, last question.
Love all the questions. It's great.
Access to resources can limit one's ability to act on one's inspiration. Access to people, access to knowledge and events, and also available funds. How can you keep accessing your engines when your access to the individual things is limited?
I'll start. Yeah, I think that's real, first of all. And I don't want to minimize or not acknowledge that. And given that reality, there's usually a way to find room to move in small ways, in ways that require different resources than the ones that are so constrained, right? Sometimes just getting together with people, if you're financially constrained, just being able to connect with people and pool ideas and start to think of things is a way that you can act, right? So looking for different resources you can use than the ones that are constrained, but finding some action. Remember that invincibility that is part of inspiration. It really stirs action. And so I believe that with the increased possibility and sense of invincibility, you find ways to move. We have a number of stories in the book about people that were down and out or didn't have the constraints or were fighting very difficult life circumstances. Again, I acknowledge the reality of it and it's not easy, but you can find ways to make some movement and then that can create some momentum.
Fantastic.
I'll just add one little piece to build on to that. In coaching, we often talk about sphere of influence, that there's things that you can control, there's things that you can influence. So things you can directly control, things that you can influence. So they're not under your direct control, but you can kind of influence them potentially. And then everything else that's outside of your control or influence. And so sometimes I find it's helpful for people to think about, if they're in situations where there are things that they cannot influence or control, to almost understand in their minds and even categorize for themselves, these are the things that I cannot influence or control. I cannot do anything about this, 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 and this. It can sometimes even feel empowering to just acknowledge those things. And then to say, okay, now that I know I can't influence or control these things, what is within my sphere of influence and control? And as Sandy mentioned, it may be something small, but it may be something, it could be internal, a mindset. It could be something, a small action you can take, but it is empowering both to be able to move forward and take action within your sphere of control and influence and to let go of the things that you can't.
Really powerful. Sandy, Allison, thank you both so much for this presentation. A lot of thank yous pouring in from our viewers as well. The Alumni Association thanks you both for taking the time to be with us, for sharing your work with your fellow MIT alumni from around the globe. To our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Please complete the survey Because based on all of these questions, we could have a part 2 potentially. Like, let us know in your feedback. As a reminder, today's webinar will be on the Alumni Association's YouTube channel under the Career Lunch and Learn playlist. It'll be available in about a week. And if you have questions, please email us at alumnicareers@mit.edu. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Allison. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you for
everyone.
having us. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.